Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ever podcast with Up Next. My name is Rincon Ramirez. I am one of the founders here.
I'm Lauren Carr. I'm one of the junior writers.
Hi, I'm Abby Bussico, and I'm also a founder. We are missing one of our other members, our junior writer, Stephanie Ferguson, but she did put in input in the questions we are going to be asking our interviewer today. And who is our interviewer? Newly elected House of Delegate Ian Lovejoy.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's exciting.
You're welcome. We're really excited to have you.
Yeah.
Very.
So just to start off, tell us about yourself, like your job, family, where you got your education, just like those stuff.
Well, first off, I went to school at Virginia Tech, so
Oh.
I'm offended by your shirt. But, my name is Ian Lovejoy. I am the new delegate-elect for House District 22, and so they add the elect part for folks who are elected but haven't quite been sworn in yet, which is frankly the best time in a politician's life is to have won the election but not actually be in office yet.
Yeah.
So we get to go around and do fun things like this and talk to folks.
Nice.
So House District 22, it's mid-Prince William County. Every 10 years, the lines for the House of Delegates get redrawn, and so they were redrawn, and this is the first time this seat has ever existed because it came out of that redistricting process. So this area used to be represented by, I think, 5 separate delegates who took little bits of it and chunks of it, but when they redrew the lines, they consolidated this area into a much more compact, logical shape. So I will be representing Nokesville, Bristow, over into the Coles district, kind of wrapping around the city of Manassas, but not including the city of Manassas, and Patriot High School is one of our high schools.
Yeah.
So, myself, I was actually born and raised in West Virginia, and I moved here about 20 years ago when I went to grad school at Virginia Tech and kind of fell in love with the Commonwealth and chose to stay. I moved to the city of Manassas, and when I was 29, I decided to run for city council there in the city of Manassas, which I'd only been in the city for a few years, and when I talked to friends and neighbors, the overwhelming sentiment was you shouldn't do that because you're young, you're new, you haven't been here a long time. It's an old city with old families that tend to control everything. But, 29 may not sound young to you all, but at the time, it was unusual to have a 29-year-old running for city council. And I ran. I didn't fully expect to win the race because I was sort of an outsider and new, but to my surprise, I did win. So I won a seat on the city council in Manassas where I served for 2 terms. That was 8 years. The trial by fire for being an elected official, I think everybody should go through local government because you have to deal with your friends, your neighbors, you see them in the grocery stores, you're talking about schools and parking lots and potholes and all the things that kind of matter to the day-to-day lives of folks. So that was a great 8 years. And then I rolled off the city council in 2020 and kind of thought I was done. 8 years is a long time to serve anywhere, and particularly kind of the intensity of a city council. And then they redrew these lines, and this district kind of came into existence, and thought, well, that's kind of compatible with me. And I did run for delegate, and this is sort of a story about perseverance. I ran for delegate first in 2019 under the old lines, and I not only lost, I very lost. Like I very clearly lost, and I kind of thought I was done. And then these new lines were drawn, and this district came out, and a lot of folks were like, "Hey, you ran in a large part of that area 4 years ago, and people know you there, and we put a lot of effort in. You should try it again." And fortunately, I decided to do that. I got married in February.
Oh,
wow.
congrats.
Thank you. And my wonderful wife was willing to get married in February and immediately turn around and dive into an aggressive race for the House of Delegates.
Nice.
So right as soon as we got back from the honeymoon, it was campaign. So professionally, I own a recruitment firm. So we coordinate hiring events for different industries throughout the United States. So we do about 20 hiring events for different corporations, different industries and cities around the U.S. So really active in workforce and job development. So I'm a politician, so I could talk about myself forever, but that's those are the highlights.
Very nice.
It says age, I'm 41. There we go.
Okay.
We just put that in just.
Sure. 42 in January. Literally 2 weeks, so terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. Following that, why or how did you decide to campaign to be a delegate?
I've always, even since I was a kid, I was one of the kids who took things apart, wanted to know how things work. Was always kind of fascinated with how things operate, and that included, our society, and that kind of transformed over the years. I was kind of the student government nerd. I was student president freshman year, sophomore year, all the way through high school. And when we did class,
have I don't know if you know, but Frank Kelly is our school representing president, and Lauren
Junior
is
class president.
Yeah.
there you go. So similar trajectory.
Yeah.
And I was a shyer kid, but I was involved in performing arts. So we did choir and singing and dancing, and that was hugely important and kind of coming out of my shell and talking and engaging people. So, but yeah, I've always, when I would do class projects in high school, I would always kind of end up being in charge of them. And so just always kind of felt more comfortable organizing other folks and helping get things done. And that parlayed into, I was involved in student government in college. And then, of course, I ran for the city council. And so I felt like, particularly being on a city council, I felt like I had good experience for, particularly a new district. You wanted some experience behind you, so you could get to work in Richmond as soon as you get elected. And I felt I had the right experience. I am not young by any measure, but 40 is still kind of young for the House of Delegates, and having a new family and being just married and being facing children on their horizon kind of scenario. That's a different perspective than a lot of the older folks who currently represent in the House of Delegates. And so I thought that was an important voice. And being a small business owner, that's an important voice. So I thought needed to be heard. So all that kind of compelled me to think I'd be a good fit for representing the area.
Yeah.
awesome.
Nice.
Well, that's a great answer. I really enjoyed your answer to that. Following that, we would like to know just your ideals from prior work as president of the Manassas City Public Schools Education Foundation. Will you be bringing any of your team or any ideas from your term as president into your term as Virginia delegate?
Yeah, so the Manassas City Public Schools, it's a mouthful, the Manassas City Public Schools Education Foundation, it's the nonprofit that accompanied the Manassas City Public School System, and Prince William County has its own version called Spark, so that's the nonprofit foundation that supports the schools. And most schools have them, and serving as president, what we did was we did innovation grants for teachers. And so what we kind of learned, we did scholarships and all sorts of stuff, but what was most interesting was we did a lot of innovation grants for teachers, which is, they weren't huge grants. They were a couple $1,000s here and there. But what we learned is you didn't always need a lot to do a lot. So, I'm sitting in your studio. This is the type of thing that I would have seen, particularly one of those grants potentially funding. Yeah. A one-time investment, a couple $1,000s, but it could theoretically set up and change. It could set up a whole program and change, a lot of students' lives for the better. And so what it kind of taught me was we need to experiment. We need to put a little bit of money into these experimental programs and projects that don't normally get funded or that don't come out of the standard school budget. We saw that, we coordinated buses to help get kids to after-school programs. We discovered kids needed programs, and the programs existed, but they had trouble getting there. So we helped bridge the gap by funding transportation to those programs. And so, but overall, I think it just brings a sense of innovation. I mean, education is where we should be innovating and trying new things. And that's sort of what I learned as president, is that through those grants is that you can try these, not super costly experiments essentially to see what programs might work and be of interest.
Nice.
Awesome.
So we saw the statistics, and you beat your opponent by a 5% margin, which means that 74% of the voters who voted for your opponent weren't obviously in favor of you. So how do you think you will balance being the voice for the people who did vote for you, but also as well see the other side of the spectrum as well?
I just consider myself fortunate that I got a majority. Sometimes people win with 48. Sometimes people win with less than 50%, which means more people didn't want them than did. So we were happy to crack 50, which it's always nice to know that at least the majority of the voters want you to be there. But even beyond, those are the people who voted. There's also people who didn't vote, who could have, and there's people who aren't eligible to vote yet. And so in any election, there's a pool of people well beyond just the people who cast a vote on election day that you have to be mindful of. When I was on city council, it was a split government through most of that. It transitioned from one party to the other while I was on council, and for a lot of times it was 50-50, and then it pivoted to the to the other party. So during those 8 years, we had to work to get things done. Everyone had to work together. We had to be bipartisan. Usually good ideas poke through and shine through and, get bipartisan support. Probably 90% of legislation out of Richmond is bipartisan. We really talk about the 10% that isn't. But, people should rest a little bit assured that most of the legislation and most of the things, in fact, do pass with bipartisan support. Richmond is tied up. It's a one seat in each chamber, and you have the other party, has the governorship. So it's as tied and split and neutral almost as the state government can be. And so everyone on both sides has to learn to get along if you want to get anything meaningfully done. And I think, I did that on city council. When you have a one-seat majority, if someone gets up to go to the bathroom, the other party's in charge. So everyone's going to have to work to get along. And I think the tone right now, people are starting to understand that. And the tone coming from my colleagues and people from across the aisle and other freshmen who were elected this year, I think everyone's ready to work together.
That's very nice. Yeah.
Okay, so up next is a student-led blog with our motto being made by the students, for the students. And we aim to educate the future voters of America. With that being said, we want to know how you will have students and young adults' voices heard while you are in office.
I mean, I think it starts with things like this. I think being available to students when they ask and to come out. And one of the first, when we were elected, we had a constituent services website ready to go that night so that we could start coordinating the district and start leading and getting feedback. We've initiated a program called 50 Ways in 50 Days, which we started it on 50 days out from the start of session. And the goal of it is to get 50 good ideas on how to administer this district and good ideas for legislation and how we should do outreach and how we should manage our office. And so we've been very proactive about trying to get in front of folks, educate them as to who, some people don't even know they live in a new district. So educate people as to who I am and what role I can have in serving them. But one of the first emails we sent was to all the principals and all the schools in the district, including Patriot, to introduce myself and my staff. And to make ourselves available. And we're definitely going to be doing a push into the civics education piece. Like your teacher reached out and that was amazing, but we want to make sure that all the civics infrastructure within the district, everyone knows that I'm available to come out and speak. As a councilman, I would guest lecture at NVCC about local government issues, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again at NVCC or GMU to come in and do an evening of discussion. But our office is going to be very aggressive about being very public and transparent about engaging folks, and so we hope that people take us up on that offer. And a piece of that is, younger folks need to feel comfortable with being able to do that. And you guys are definitely helping bridge that gap, and you're part of that solution just as much as anybody, so thank you.
Yeah, especially thank you, too, for just coming, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in our generation, like the future voters, they don't think they really have a say in what goes, because most of our parents are like, oh, you're too young, like, just you're still in high school, you don't have that much to say. But like, I feel like if young voters and just young people in general have like the drive to make stuff happen and like especially talk to you and do your programs as well.
Well, the debt we're creating goes somewhere. And you all. So
we do have media and social media to fall back on, and we do use our voice a lot in that way, as we are doing right now. But sometimes that social media can be inaccurate or have false news, I suppose. So we can't really we can't really rely on it as much. Right. So doing things like this, I hope will.
I mean, everyone should do their research. I mean, and everyone should do their research on any issue, listen to the opposing side, I think the best exercise is ask yourself, what would you need to hear to change your mind? And accept, if the answer is nothing, well, then perhaps you're too entrenched. And, and set those standards, but do your own research. And social media is terrible. Don't listen to that.
Well, going along with education, because you're very vocal in that realm. So do you, as your priority of empowering parents to guide their children's education, and can you do you think, since parents, do you think parents,
You're good.
Since you have, okay, let me.
Do I think my priority of empowering parents to guide their children's education can affect student learning and allow a blind eye in teaching important topics that their parents don't align with?
There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so like most things, there's been a big push in the Commonwealth about parental involvement and parental rights and what that means. And the challenge that we have is public education is, I hate to say it, but it is a government coordinated, organized
Yeah.
education system. It is organized by our government. It's a government designed and managed education system. And we all have, I loved school when I was a kid, and we all have fond memories of it. We all have great teachers and good memories of it. But at the end of the day, it is a government administrated institution. And there's a challenge there of bringing thousands of students with thousands of parents with thousands of different point of views. And when you then filter them through a government organized institution that has responsibility with creating good outcomes, but also doing it at reasonable taxpayer cost, how do you do that? And how do you find a balance between a very rigid cookie cutter educational institution where one size fits all, one ideology fits all, one belief fits all? And how do you have an individualized educational experience where there's some variance and variability in, that takes into account some difference of opinions? And that's really what these debates ultimately all come down to, is how standardized do you want it to be? And now we are incredibly, we are a nation and a community that's very much built on individualism and individual rights and individual expression and wearing the clothes that you want and listening to the music you like and living the life you want. So we hear that living the life you want and the way you want your life to be, and that's one of the great things about being in America. Simultaneously, how do you sort of reconcile that with a standardized education system? And it's hard. It's because you have to have some standardization. You have to have some common set. I mean, I know the question is, you don't want to turn a blind eye. There's certain cultural tent poles and historic tent poles that you can't ignore and that must be taught and understood as a part of our shared culture as Americans and as members of this community. So the short answer is we should allow as much parental involvement as humanly possible, as is reasonable. We should allow as much parental decision over their children's education as much as humanly possible. But we do need to be mindful that we can't totally customize every student's educational experience 100%. And that's really, that gets into deeper issues of, private schools and vouchers, and should parents be able to just simply take the money that would be allotted and find the education experience that really meets their wants and needs versus a standardized public education and huge, it is a great question. It's a complicated one, but at the end of the day, parents should have a say. They should have a role. There should be some customization and some options for students and how they approach their educational experience. But at the same time, we can't strip out the most important elements of education that we all need to know and understand. So,
yeah, exactly.
I definitely think that our question and that topic is surfacing the political everywhere, and it's coming up and questioning whether parents and their support. And
one of the hardest jobs in government is school board, and you can pay. It's a very difficult job, and school boards for decades have been saying parental involvement, parental involvement, parental involvement. But it can't just be for bake sales, and it can't just be for parental involvement when the school system needs something from parents. Parental involvement also is parents coming out and saying things they don't like. And those conversations should be respectful, and those conversations should follow the rules, and those conversations should be respectful. That's the most important thing. But school boards exist to be that system that collects parental feedback and sort of filters it and makes decisions based on it. And so to my friends on school boards, it encourages me that parents are coming out and engaging. That is exactly how the system is supposed to work. Parents have to be mindful and respectful, but it can't just be showing up for Spirit Night and doing cupcake sales. It can be parents can have more meaningful things to say, and school boards, I think, are trying to figure out how to listen.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question is that you talked about being an entrepreneur. So can you share your success story or an example of how your policies or advice has positively impacted small businesses in Virginia?
Well, yeah, so my business, we're in recruitment, so we do hiring events throughout the Commonwealth. We focus a lot on veterans hiring is a big piece of it. We focus a lot on law enforcement recruitment. That's a big piece of it. So that kind of puts our finger on the pulse of those, I don't know if you've noticed, law enforcement's been in the news over the past couple of years. Yeah. So we are definitely at sort of the forefront of sort of feeling those things. I'll say that building my own business, being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, it's one of the greatest, scariest things that you can do. No matter how if you work for somebody else, no matter how bad the job is, somebody else is still responsible for signing your check and making sure it clears the bank and that you have money. So owning my own business, I am responsible for that for my employees. And so I have to make sure that those checks clear and that my employees have livelihoods. And I think a lot of times people are making policies that sound good, but they are not individuals who've had to start businesses and know that struggle and have to sign the check and make sure that the business is solvent. And so entrepreneurial and particularly small business voices need to be heard when we're making these important decisions, because most legislation sounds great. I mean, it's very rare that on the face of a piece of legislation, you're just like, oh, that's terrible. No politician wants to pass horrible sounding legislation. So everything sounds great, but the question is, what are the ramifications it has on, we call them the mom and pop shops, small business leaders. And most people work for a small business. Most people are employed by employers that have fewer than 20 or 30 employees. They're smaller businesses. They could be franchises of larger businesses, so it feels like your local McDonald's may have the McDonald's logo, but if you ever really look at the paperwork, it's owned by someone around here who manages it, and so that's a small business as well in a sense. So many jobs come from our small businesses, and we just, particularly after COVID, we just have to be very mindful of our legislative priorities and make sure that they're in mind.
Yeah. Okay. What skills from your background, or as you said, when you were in school and you really noticed that you liked what you were doing, what skills do you find most valuable in your role as a politician? And following up on that, what advice would you give to a student who's interested in the same field?
Again, I think starting in a city council was, well, you sort of backtracking. It started in high school. I mean, talking to strangers and asking them to vote for you is one thing. Talking to a confined pond of X hundreds or thousands of people, most of whom you know, to vote for you, your friends or frenemies or not friends with everyone. That's hard. So I mean, just stepping out of my shell and engaging folks even at the high school level was certainly a start, and then cutting my teeth on a city council so city council is year round. You meet almost 3 times a week, every week, 52 weeks a year, managing the city's business. That was a lot of great experience. And my advice to youths who are interested, my general advice is, if you believe in something, get involved in it. Maybe it's not something I believe in or other people believe in, but the most important thing is to get involved in things that you believe in and fight for them. And if you want to run for, my other advice is just, if you want to run for something, run for it. Like, a lot of people told me not to run for city council, and if I'd listened to them, I'm sure I would be a happy person right now, but I wouldn't be about to join the House of Delegates. We are American democracy is designed for citizens to just step up and say, I want to do it. And so if you're interested in stuff, run for it. And if I ran for city council twice. I lost my second turn. I lost my first House of Delegates run. I won this one. So, if you believe in something, fight for it. If you want to run for something, run for it. Don't, listen to yourself, listen to your family, more so than naysayers.
Yeah. Great advice. I know we already touched on how you want to work with other people of the other side of the political spectrum, but with the Virginia House of Delegates as well as the state Senate being more on the Democratic side, how do you approach negotiation and compromise when dealing with differing opinions on legislative matters?
I mean, I think communication is always going to be the most important thing. We have to communicate. A one-seat majority in each chamber isn't huge, and also Republicans have the governorship, which has veto power over a lot of the stuff that is going to come out of the General Assembly. So it's a profoundly balanced government right now. And I think both sides need to know that we have to work together to get big things done. I think there's going to be a lot of consensus built around mental health infrastructure in the Commonwealth. The two big things that everyone seems to be in loose agreement on heading into the General Assembly is mental health reform and also workforce development, which is important for all you all who are going to college or graduating. But making sure that every Virginian who wants a job in Virginia can have the right job in Virginia at the right time, and to make sure that the employers have the workforce being built up that it needs. And things are changing faster now than they ever have, which is the oldest old man sounding thing I've ever said. But things are changing fast now, and the truth is the employment market and the job market is changing on a dime. And who knew that the jobs of today were going to exist, and suddenly we need plumbers again, and like all these trade jobs are suddenly coming back in, and you can make six figures being an electrician, and we have to kind of loop back and make sure that piece is taken care of. But, you know, at the end of it, it's the core of the question is it's about respect and finding common ground, focusing on the, you know, if you just said, this is the legislation we all kind of just agree on, let's push that, and then just dig in deep and focus on the stuff we disagree on and try to find common ground. That's the best way to get it done.
Yeah, and especially with like the news in today's like day and age, and like with the House of Delegates, like the national level, and just like seeing like them constantly fighting, speakers of the houses getting like taken out, and like it just like I feel like a lot of students and just like people in general see that and they just imply it on like our state level, and it's good to like hear that background of like how you still like, even though you're on opposing sides, you still want to like talk to other people.
Right. I mean, I need their help to get anything I want to get done, and in a lot of scenarios, they're going to need my help to get anything done they want to get done. So, and yeah, I mean, the state government works much better than the federal government.
I mean, it was kind of like what we were saying before, just our generation kind of getting that point of view when they see like news flashing on the TV, and that's all they're seeing. But we kind of trying to give them like an eye into like what you're going through, and your answer to that was really relieving and like
and a piece of it is the news wants you to see the flashy, crazy stuff because that's how they make money and how people watch and do commercials. The Congress has always been a mess since 1776. I mean, it's Congress being a mess isn't particularly new. How rapidly we can communicate how bad of a mess it is has certainly changed, but probably not reassuring. But moral of the story is Congress hasn't gotten worse. It's always been this bad. But it's just we're seeing more of it because of our technology now.
Abby, do you want to do the question before the last one?
Oh, yeah. I had a question of my own just about, because you did have a bit on your website about defunding the police and how your stance is on that. And I was just wondering, obviously, like we were talking about before, law enforcement and how that played a role now, and also really impacted a lot of our lives a couple of years before. But how do you kind of just like how you're putting it like in support of the other side of the political spectrum, but how are you gonna help those or like inform those that are also vocal about not defunding the police and having more of like less of their having law enforcement less impactful or included in social aspects?
Well, I mean, the goal is to have a police force that is well-trained, well-organized, and that is very comfortable in its community, and that the community is very comfortable with. And I think that
with your 2-year term in the Virginia House of Delegates, whether general or specific, what do you hope to ultimately achieve?
I would like to coalesce the communities inside of HD 22 so that they know that I am their delegate and I'm available to assist them. And I mean, the goal, the main things through the campaign is cost of living is high and getting higher, and transportation are issues here. And so just anything I can do to bring down cost of living or at least stop it from going up, anything we can do to counteract inflation and hopefully bring prices of daily life down as best we can, or at least not add to them. And, you know, transportation in Northern Virginia is always an issue, and data centers are a huge issue up here, and folks are looking for some meaningful reform in data centers so that they're not living right next to them, and hopefully we can have some wins on all those fronts.
I know it's a basic answer, but we just wanted to wrap it up on like you've probably been asked this a bunch of times too, but yeah.
It's a good question. It's a neat question, yeah.
But yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. Look forward to more, and thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor.
Thank you.
And we were glad to have you answer all these questions for us. You answered them very well, and you seem like a natural.
Thank you. I have a face for radio or podcast, I say. But thank you all. Again, thank you all. My hat's off to you for doing this and taking the interest in this, and
thank you.
And doing this for your fellow students. And you know, if you need anything, let me know. And if your parents need anything, let me know.
Thank
you so much for having me today.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.